When people ask what a California motorcycle accident case is worth, what they usually want is a number. But that is usually the wrong place to start, because motorcycle accident case value is not built on internet averages, headline verdicts, or someone else's story. It's built on proof. So in this video, I want to answer the question the right way. Because if you want a serious answer, you have to ask a better question than what is the average. The better question is, what are the real value drivers in this case? The first thing that drives value is damages. In plain terms, what did the crash actually cost you? California court systems describe personal injury damages broadly enough to include losses like medical bills, lost wages, emotional harm, and other injury-related losses. That means case value often starts with the measurable harm. Emergency care, hospital bills, surgery, follow-up treatment, physical therapy, medication, diagnostic imaging, future care, lost income, reduced ability to work, and damage to the motorcycle or other property. These are the more concrete pieces, because a motorcycle case is not just about what was changed. It's about what was taken. The easiest part of a value discussion to understand is economic damages. These are losses that tend to have records behind them. Think medical treatment, missed work, wage loss, repair or replacement cost, out-of-pocket expenses to the crash. The law specifically identifies medical bills and lost wages as categories of recoverable loss in a personal injury case. And this is also where documentation matters. Because if a treatment is thin, inconsistent, or poorly documented, even a real injury can look smaller than it actually is. Then there's the part where people often feel most deeply and understand least clearly: pain and suffering. California jury instructions recognize non-economic damages for things like physical pain, mental suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, disfigurement, physical impairment, inconvenience, grief, anxiety, humiliation, emotional distress. This is where a motorcycle case often becomes much more significant than an outsider might assume. Because a rider may be dealing with daily pain, fear of riding again, limited mobility, sleep disruption, visible scarring, traumatic stress, inability to train, work, parent, travel, or live normally, loss of confidence and independence. Those harms do not always come with a simple receipt, but that does not make them less real. And it does not make them less important in evaluating value. The next major value driver is fault. Not because every case must be perfect, but because liability strength changes leverage. If fault is clear, the case is generally positioned more strongly. If liability is disputed, or if the defense has a credible comparative fault argument, that can reduce the practical value of the case, even if the rider still has a valid claim. California comparative fault principles allow responsibilities to be apportionate rather than treated as all or nothing, which means a plaintiff's share of fault can affect recovery rather than automatically erase it. That means case value is not just a damages question. It is a damages plus liability question. A case with serious injuries but difficult fault can be worth less in real world than a cleaner case with somewhat lower damages. That is not because the injuries matter less. It is because the risk changes value. And that is exactly why the earlier part of this series matters, and what you did after the crash, whether there are difficult facts in the case, and how fault is actually analyzed all flow directly into value. This is the part many people do not think about until later. A case may have one value on paper and another in the real world, depending on available insurance or collectible assets. California DMV material states that the current minimum liability coverage requirements are $30,000 for injury or death to one person, $60,000 for injury or death to more than one person, and $15,000 for property damage. That matters because a rider can suffer losses far beyond the minimum available coverage. So when people ask, what is my case worth? These are really two different questions hiding underneath that. What is the damage value of the case, and what money is realistically available to satisfy it? Those are not always the same answer. Here is the practical version. Things that often increase the value: serious, well-documented injuries, clear fault, strong medical support, consistent treatment, surgery or long-term impairment, wage loss or reduced earning capacity, visible scarring or permanent limitation, strong evidence, credible presentation of how life changed. Things that often lower value: gaps in treatment, weak documentation, unclear liability, avoidable statement problems, exaggerated claims not supported by record, minimal medical care for supposedly major injuries, social media or other evidence that undercuts the story, limited insurance coverage. None of that is flashy, but it is real. And real value analysis is usually quieter and more disciplined than people expect. The biggest mistake: treating average settlement as an answer. This is the biggest trap in the entire subject. People search for average motorcycle accident settlement because they want certainty. But averages blur everything that actually matters. They blur injury severity, they blur fault, they blur insurance limits, they blur credibility, they blur evidence, they blur performance, and they blur risk. Once you blur those things, you are no longer really talking about the case in front of you. You are talking about a number that sounds useful, but often is not. A real value assessment asks what injuries are actually here, what treatment is documented, what future care may exist, how strong is liability, is there comparative fault, what did this do to the rider's work and daily life, what coverage is available, what can be proven. This is how serious cases evaluation works. If you were injured in a motorcycle accident in California, do not rely on generic averages to tell you what your case may be worth. Get the case evaluated through the facts that actually drive value. Book your call with me today and let's talk through what happened. A strong case is not built on wishful numbers. It's built on documented truth. If you take one thing from this video, let it be this: a California motorcycle accident is not worth the average. It is worth what the damages, the evidence, the full picture, and the available recovery actually supports. That is the real answer. In the next video, we're going to cover the final major question in this series. How long do you have to file a motorcycle accident claim in California? Because even a strong case can be damaged by waiting too long.